All right. I am live. Show my microphone where it's supposed to be because I'm good for having it misplaced when I start. I am live. So let me let my peeps know that I'm here. And we will jump into today's topic. Now, I've had people ask me why I don't review everything like other channels. That's because I only do the stuff that I'm interested in, and because I do a lot of other things during the week because I'm a writer. I'm a writer of books, comic books, novels. I write poetry. I also write music. I write and produce music. And I have even more stuff beyond that I do. So, and then a lot of the stuff, coming down the pipe just doesn't really interest me. Like, I don't really know if I plan to see Tron Ares, but after I heard everything about it, because they're saying that it's worse than Snow White and stuff. And I mean, good Lord. I mean, good Lord. So if it's worse than Snow White, then yikes. So that's what I mean. I got no desire to pay money, spend money, or spend time watching that when the reports are coming back that it's as bad as it is. And so we kind of knew that when certain people were cast in it, not mentioning any names, but we knew when we saw the cast, we were like, oh, okay. So we knew where it was going. Because some people these days are more like the kiss of death, more like, you put them in the film and it's DOA. Now, we all wish that wasn't true, but it is true for some people, I'm sad to say. So, anyway, so none of that is what we're going to be talking about today. I just wanted to clear that up. And then I was looking at the slate, DC slate for next year. So we're not really going to get any new stuff after Peacemaker, which I don't watch because I'm not watching that until next year anyway. But that dovetails nicely into what I am going to talk about today. And what I am going to talk about today is this right here. That's right. Yeah. What I'm going to talk about today is your jumping on point. Your jumping on point. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, I made a tweet about it this week, so let's pull that up. That'll be the first thing we pull up, and then we'll go from there. So let me share that. Okay. Get that out of the way. Okay. So what I said here was, so I tried to blow that up, so hopefully you can see that better. So what I said here was, I often think about how each generation has their jumping on point. When you're first introduced to an IP, that tends to be your baseline for how you measure it. The longer it's been around and the younger you are, the less of it you have experienced. And I find that fascinating. Let me say that again. Each generation has a jumping on point. When you're first introduced to an IP, that tends to be your baseline for how you measure it. In other words, you think your first experience with that IP is all that it is, or that's the max experience, or that's the pinnacle or the peak, which may or may not be true. The longer the IP has been around, combined with the younger you are, that literally means the less of that IP you have experienced. So I was using here Superman as an example. We're going to look at him and a few other examples. So now Superman has not been out of print. You hear me say it every week now. Superman has not been out of print since 1938. We're just looking at live action adaptations with this particular meme. So going all the way back to 1948 with Kirk Allen. Wow. And then George Reeves. Now, For those of you not old enough, or those of you that never watched the George Reeves show, or those of you that don't know anything about the George Reeves version, that's where the phrase truth, justice, and the American way got codified into Superman's mythology with the George Reeves TV show, which started out in black and white and turned into color before it went off the air. Just some nostalgia bits there. Then we have Christopher Reeve, which most people that saw him and saw him when it was happening still to this day consider him the definitive Superman. And I talk about it all the time. Other actors played Superman. Christopher Reeve became Superman. You just have to watch Superman the movie and Superman 2 and you'll see what I mean. That man completely disappeared. And him and Richard Donner and Mario Puzo and Bill Sienkiewicz gave us a story of if Superman were real, what would he look like? What would he be like? How would he act? And that's what Christopher Reeve put on the screen. I mean, it was breathtakingly good, and it's still the gold standard from comic book to screen translation. Christopher Reeve is still, to this day in 2025, still the gold standard of how to take a superhero from the comic book that he originates from and put him on the big screen. I mean, so if you weren't alive or you weren't around, I strongly suggest you watch Superman the movie, which came out in 78. It won't have the same impact because, and we're going to talk about that too, about cultural relevance. But just so you get an idea of why people are always raving about him, you need to see him in action. You'll see it. Okay. Then we have the Superboy TV show, which I've discovered a lot of people don't know about. Superboy TV show from 88 to 92 had two actors play Superboy. One was John Haymes Newton and one was Gerard Christopher. So they kind of switched the main lead in the middle of the show. And there's a lot going on behind that. Same thing happened with Shazam, the Captain Marvel TV series, way back in the day, because Jackson Bostwick was the first Captain Marvel, and he's still my favorite. Then they switched him. And there's, lore mythology beyond that. Also, the Superboy TV show was the last time we got a redheaded Lana Lang. Stacey Haddock is the last one. That's the last redhead Lana Lang we've ever gotten in live action. Okay. Also, some people may not know that Superman being in action as a teen is a retcon from the comics. Originally in the comics, Superman went from a baby and then grew up and became Clark and went into action as an adult. Later on, they retconned him to actually have adventures when he was a teenager. That's where the original Superboy comes from. So Superboy's existence is actually a comic book retcon, if you didn't know that. It's pointed out. Then we had Dean Cain, 93 to 97. Lois and Clark. I was trying to think of the name. I was thinking New Avengers Superman. No, that's not him. Lois and Clark. And that was Dean Cain and Terry Hatcher. And everybody that saw that show agrees that their chemistry was just off the charts. And Dean Cain has even talked about it since then and talked about how she had a spark as Lois that he didn't feel with other actresses. So, I mean, they were just legendary together. They were some of the best Superman we'd seen on TV in terms of live action because it's the only show featuring Superman since George Reeves. Because all the shows were Superboy. This was a Superman show. And it was great. Then we had Smallville, Tom Welling. Tom Welling never actually played Superman, and he made that clear. Tom Welling played Clark Kent. And so I don't want to get into that because Smallville is still a traumatic event for me that I can't make you understand what I went through with Smallville. So it's best if I don't talk about it because it's going to turn into a rant. It's going to eat up all my time, and I don't want to eat up all my time ranting about that show. So don't get me started. Then we had Brandon Routh. And some of the controversy at the time was that the studios were saying audiences couldn't deal with two versions of Superman on the screen at the same time. And we were all like, why? So Smallville was Clark before, he becomes Superman, and Superman Returns was actually set 5 years after Superman 2. So Christopher Reeve made 4 Superman movies, and 3 and 4 were really bad. So they ignored 3 and 4 and took it from 2. Superman Returns with Brandon Routh was set 5 years after Superman 2. That's the premise. That Superman heard that Krypton might have survived in some fashion, left Earth, and went to see for himself, which doesn't make any sense as a premise, because the last thing Christopher Reeve Superman said in Superman 2 was, "Good afternoon, Mr. President. Sorry I've been away so long. I won't let you down again." Those are his last words in the movie. And then right after that, he disappears for 5 years. Don't tell nobody where he went, not even Lois. Anyway, that was the premise of Superman Returns. So that was Ralph. Now, Ralph got a second chance at the character, which everybody was rooting for, because everybody realized he wasn't their problem. It was the story he was in, not him. And he also, the first time, was doing more or less a Christopher Reeve impersonation. And I think when he showed up on the CW Crisis, I think he got a better handle on the character for himself, I think. Okay. Then we had Henry Cavill in the Snyderverse. And, that's always controversial. That's always a whole big thing, because people are always tripping on, well, now they're tripping on Snyder versus Gunn. But before, a lot of the people that follow Snyder tend to kind of worship him and kind of treat it more like it's very cultish in the way they follow him and the way they just bought wholesale into the Snyderverse, and how they think it's the only, good real version. And people have just kind of planted their comic book geek flags on the Snyderverse and everything that comes along with it, on Cavill in particular. And it's really, really funny, because there wasn't really a cultish element that I could see to Superman until Snyderverse, until Henry Cavill. That was the first time I'd see. Now, I'm not talking about having a following, because Smallville has a huge fan base. Christopher Reeve has a huge fan base. Lois and Clark had a huge fan base. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about fan bases. I'm talking about cult-like followings. That happened with Snyderverse. That happened with Henry Cavill's version, because of the way the people that worship Snyder, they really worship him. Don't understand why, but they do. So that was kind of the first time. See, so if that was your exposure, if that's your first exposure to Superman, that's why you tend to think that way. Because that was the narrative. That Snyderverse was the best verse, was the only verse, nothing else mattered, and that Snyder ought to get a chance to continue his ideas. But it was cultish, and it still is. Okay, and then if you know anything about Nicolas Cage was a part of the original idea behind Superman Returns. It was originally going to be a Tim Burton film, and Nicolas Cage was set to star as Kal-El, but that didn't fly, no pun intended, that didn't go. So we saw some screen tests, and that was about it, until The Flash, the movie The Flash with Ezra Miller. What happened in that movie is, the climax of the movie, spoiler alert, is it shows you the multiverse collapsing. And so it shows you different dimensions. And so there's a cameo of Chris Reeve and Helen Slater in there. There's Jay Garrick running in there. 66 Batman is in there. So one of the worlds that we see in the collapse is Nicolas Cage as Superman. So that's really the only time we've seen him. And it was CGI. So it's really the only time we've seen him actually suit up on screen. So that's what it means, 2023, because he didn't have a movie. That movie didn't happen. He appeared as a cameo character in the climax of the Flash movie with Ezra Miller. Then we have Tyler Hoechlin, which was on the CW show, Superman and Lois. And a lot of people swear by his version of Superman. They say, again, that was the best. And that version of Superman is after he and Lois were married, and they had a family, and they had been parents for a while. So it's actually a version of Superman we hadn't seen before in the big or small screens on a continual basis, where he and Lois were married, no more hiding the identity, and they had a family. And they were dealing with that, dealing with Clark being Superman and what that looks like as they're married and raising their children with superpowers and that whole nine. And then before that show is over, he reveals his identity. And, so it's kind of like its own version. And a lot of people swear by that version. And then we have obviously the David Corenswet James Gunn version, which came out this year, 2025. And if you've watched my reviews or if you follow me on Twitter, you know that I cannot stand that movie. I can't stand that movie. I can't stand it. I can't stand it. I can't stand it. I hate everything about that stupid movie. I hate it with unbridled passion. It's not just wrong. It's wrong, wrong. It couldn't be any more wrong. Okay? The only way it could be more wrong is if they made Superman into like a black lesbian. That's the only way that movie could be more wrong. Other than gender, race, and sexuality swapping him, everything in that movie is wrong. From Jor-El to Lara to the Kents to Clark to Superman. Lois is all right. I will give Rachel Brosnahan that. Lois is all right to a point, but she doesn't have a lot to do. And the other heroes outshine him. So it's really more a Justice Gang movie co-starring Superman, to be honest. Oh, that's another one. Don't get me started on Smallville, and don't get me started on Superman 2025, James Gunn Superman. Do not get me started. So the reason I went through all that, and the point I'm making today is for the most popular superhero of all time. Now, I know that could be disputed when it comes to both Batman and Spider-Man. But I say that, but I mean the one that kicked off superheroes as we know them. That's Superman. The tropes. What's up, Prophet 815? I see your comments. I'm going to read your comments at the end, so keep them coming. I like that comment. I see it. I'm going to keep it coming. So Superman, if you didn't know it, Superman was the character that kind of gelled all of the tropes into one character that we, at least it used to associate with superheroes. We don't do it so much anymore. But what I mean by that is the dual identity, the switching from the civilian identity to the super identity, the spandex costume, the cape, the boots, and more than anything, the tights on the outside, the underwear on the outside of the costume. That was to mimic the wrestlers of the day. The strongmen of the day wore their costumes with spandex with the underwear on the outside. And that's where we get that from. And the, fantastic origin, all that kind of gel with Superman because he wasn't the first superhero. He wasn't the first costume adventurer, but superheroes, as we have defined them all this time, gelled with Superman. So I'm starting with him to show you that depending on where you jumped on board, that's what's going to determine your view of him. And that is my point. That is my point on today's live stream. That's what I'm trying to focus on. That however old you are and your age and your generation matters, because even if you saw stuff that existed before you were born, you weren't alive at the time, which means you didn't get the cultural impact. And that's something that I think people don't understand. You have to be alive at the time to understand the impact something has on the culture. So even if you retroactively watch the content, it's not going to mean the same to you. Okay, it's not going to be the same thing to you if you weren't alive when it first broadcast, because you're going to completely not understand the cultural context. Like now, anybody jumping on board for Superman now, I will say after 2013, anybody jumping aboard the Superman IP now would not understand Lois not knowing. But for the vast majority of Superman's existence, Lois Lane did not know that Clark Kent was Superman. That was something he revealed later on. For the vast majority of years that Superman has been around, Lois didn't know. So that thing about Lois knowing, it happened in the comic books in the 90s, and then it got solidified in live action around the Snyderverse time. because Brandon Routh and Kate Bosworth, she didn't know. She didn't know Clark was Superman. That's back 2019. That's not that long ago. That's just 6 years ago. She didn't know. But starting with, because Henry Cavill didn't really have a Clark alter ego until the end of the movie. So Lois Lane always knew who he was. And Tyler's version, they're married and they have a family in Smallville. And then David Cornswell's version is their relationship is not public, but Lois knows who he is in private. So that's an example of what I mean about it. If you're just now getting into Superman, and if you're young enough and these versions, these last 4 versions are the only one that you know, then you won't understand how long Lois Lane was kept in the dark as to the fact that Clark and Superman were the same person. Okay? See, so I can't make you understand. I can't make you understand that cultural impact if you weren't alive when it happened. That's my point. And so, unfortunately, what has happened to fandom is that, and make my face big for this one, unfortunately, what has happened is that all of this has become points of contention, and now we just argue about it, which is just, now heated discussion, heated debate, heated perspectives, I got no problem with, because of course we have all that. Why wouldn't we? Okay, we've always been like that. But now it's, there's something wrong with you if you don't like this version. Now it's, all of the versions are trash and blah, 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 blah. And now it's just this quagmire of a mess that is just not even in the spirit of fandom, because we have always gotten together because we love the story worlds and we love these characters. But now everything's a fight, everything's a war. Every opinion you have is the beginning of a flame war on social media. I wish it was different. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Just put your opinion up there. You'll see what happens. It's going to start just flame war. So it's no longer people being able to have their own opinions. Now it's, you're wrong for thinking and feeling that way, and blah, 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 blah. And, like I said, there's nothing you could ever say or do to make me like Superman 2025, James Gunn Superman. You're wasting your breath. People tweet at me all the time. And, it wasn't that bad and this, and it was 90% accurate about all that. You're wasting your breath. That's the worst bunch of crap I've ever seen in my life. There is no super in that man. And there's nothing you can say or do to make me like that version, the end. Okay? But I'm cool with people that do. I'm not trying to change your mind. I'm not trying to tell you what to think and feel. I'm telling you what I think and feel. But that seems to be too much to ask nowadays. So let me go on to another IP. And we're going to look right now. Let me shift perspective. We're going to look right now at Spider-Man's. Spider-Man's does whatever a spider can. Now we have both animation and live action on there, but I think Spider-Man has gotten the most versions. I could be wrong. I have to check. But I think out of all the superheroes that got realized in both animation and live action, I think Spider-Man has the most versions. And he's got even a Japanese version, and that was the first live action version, which was Nicholas Hammond in 1977. And everybody knows the Tobey Maguire version, which was 23 years ago. Can you believe that? I can't believe it. But anyway, so what I want to point out here is the same thing, and that is that your view of Spider-Man has everything to do with how long you've been following him. Your view of which iteration, and then also there's the video games. Superman has never gotten a good video game. He's been a good character maybe in the Injustice game. Superman has never gotten a good solo video game. Spider-Man's video games are off the chart. At least some of them are. Okay? And so depending on which version of Spider-Man you were introduced to, that's your version. That's the one you like. That's the one that's definitive for you. Nowadays, we have Tom Holland, and Tom Holland has talked about how these are his last days of Spider-Man. So I think he's going to do one more trilogy. So he did the Home trilogy, Homecoming, Far From Home, No Way Home. His introduction was in Civil War, which is still his best as far as I'm concerned. Spider-Man, MCU Spider-Man's best outing was still Spider-Man Civil War, as far as I'm concerned. He hasn't been better than that since. And so he's in his last days of Spider-Man, he said. And so this is just another example of, depending on how old you are and when you jumped on board, is what defines Spider-Man for you, your version of Spider-Man, what you think is the real, air quotes, the real Spider-Man, blah, 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 blah. Okay? Now we're going to get to my favorite. Y'all already know who that is. Who's my favorite, y'all? Batman's. You know that Batman's is my favorite. Okay? So Batman has been around since 1939, and the idea behind Batman was to create another Superman-level superhero, because Superman did really, really well. And so they wanted to come up with another version that could sell on that level. So Batman's created was much more financially motivated than anything else. And then there's that whole thing with Bob Kane taking all the credit for most of these years, when it's actually Bill Finger that gave us the version of Batman that we know, if you don't know that. I am going to show you that picture, just so you know. Just so you know. Okay. This was Bob Kane's original version of Batman. Yes, it was. Yes, it was. That was the original version. So the Batman that we know and love came from Bill Finger, but he didn't get the credit for it. So I'm talking about this version. That version, even the purple gloves, I like the purple gloves, but with the cowl and the pointed ears and the bat stylistic cape, the gray and black, the yellow utility belt. So that's some of that. The yellow utility belt was there with Bob Kane's version, that one, as well as the trunk and the winged cape thing. But the cowl, the mask, and the emblem, all that in the purple gloves, but just the overall coolness that we understand Batman to be, that comes from Bill Finger. And it was, for the longest time, he didn't get the credit for that, when Bill Finger is actually the one that gave us the Batman that we know. See how you may not know that about Batman? Depends on when you jumped into the mythology. Okay? So then Batman, we had Batman in the 40s and the 50s, and so during the Golden Age, he was much more sinister, much more scary. He fought supernatural foes, and he fought a lot of gangsters, and he killed. He used guns and bullets, because Batman was created in the pulp era, and he was created more pulp style. So like the Shadow and all that was more in the vein that Batman was in when he first came out. He lightens up in the 40s and the 50s. And then he gets a little bit more dark, a little bit less campy, more serious in the 60s and 70s. But the 60s is what brought the TV show. That was nothing but pure camp, but that TV show was gold. That was the biggest thing Hollywood had ever seen. Everybody was clamoring to be a guest star on the Adam West Batman TV show. But if you weren't alive, I can't make you understand what a big deal it was. And so he darkened up a little bit in the 70s, but the 80s, when Frank Miller released The Dark Knight Returns, that's what took Batman into the realm that we know him as now, as the Dark Knight Avenger and all that. It's not that he didn't have those nicknames before, but he was that dark in the beginning in 1939, and then he lightened up. And also in the 60s and 70s, they put more of a focus on him being a detective, which I loved. Him being a detective. Those stories were much more prominent in the 60s and 70s, but it was the 80s with The Dark Knight Returns, where all of a sudden he's more violent, he's brooding, he's dark, everything went dark. That's what people say set off the darkening of comics, was Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns in 1986 of Batman. It was supposed to be the last Batman story, okay? But it blew up. And so then he made more stuff and ruined the premise and all that, but that's another conversation, okay? So then we have Batman in the 90s, and we have all the back breaking and being replaced by, Azrael or Asbaz, blah, 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 blah. Then we get into the 2000s and we get into pre-New 52. Then they changed everything with the New 52. Then they changed it again with Rebirth, and then they changed it again. So these last four versions, DC has been rebooting every several years because they couldn't get stuff right. So they just ended that universe and started another one. Okay. So depending on when you jumped on the train with Batman, depends on how you see him. You know what I mean? And having said that, I also must include this. That's why I have to go here with this one. I must also include I noticed something is missing here. I didn't notice it at first, so let me see if I can find it. But Batman was also done in live action, and that has had a huge impact. A huge impact. Trying to see if I can find. Okay, let's look at this one. This might be better because I want to have it up there now. It's not complete. This was not complete. This doesn't have all of them. So let me try this one. So now you can get a better idea because Batman has serials way, 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 way back in the day. Far back as 1943. That's what you're looking at. And 49. So the Batman 66 show I was talking about was Adam West. But Batman was actually in live action way back in the 40s. Captain Marvel, who you know as Shazam, Captain Marvel was actually the first hero to get a live action movie serial. But Batman got one also. You can look them up there on YouTube. They're reflections of the day. It's him fighting gangsters and criminals, not supervillains. Okay? So Adam West, campy version, was the one that elevated the idea of him always going against supervillains in live action. Not just the comics, because the comics did it too, but that's what solidified it, excuse me, in people's minds in live action was the Adam West show. Because the Joker, Catwoman, the Penguin, and the Riddler became just as iconic on the Adam West show. Indeed, all of the Bat villains on the Adam West show became iconic. That's how powerful that show was. But if you weren't alive, I can't make you understand the cultural impact. Okay, then we had Michael Keaton, who did the first Tim Burton Batman film in '89, and that was feeding off of The Dark Knight Returns, the darker version in '86. And then when we get to the Kevin Conroy version, but that's Kevin Conroy when he did in live action, that was on the CW. When we get to the 1992 Batman animated series, which most people agree, that and the Arkham games. Batman, the animated series, Justice League, and the Arkham games are the best Batman that there's ever been. Most people that love him agree with that. But I still like Keaton in Batman '89, even though Tim Burton's movie took a lot of liberties with the mythos. There's a lot of stuff in that movie that's not right. Like him easily getting shot and falling down, Joker killing the Waynes, him dropping Joker in the vat of chemicals, which didn't happen in the comics. There's a lot. And he kills people. He did kill in the comics back in his earliest appearances. But then later on, he developed the no-kill rule. So then we had Val Kilmer in Batman Forever. A lot of people like that movie. It's too campy for me. It's the beginning of the end for me. Then we have George Clooney, which still today is hailed as the worst Batman movie, but he is not the worst Batman to me anymore. And we're going to get to that in a minute. And you already know who it is for me if you follow me on Twitter. But most people, including Clooney himself, pan Batman and Robin. because it was nothing but camp. It was it was trying to do Adam West in 97, and Joe Schumacher didn't pull it off. It was awful. Everything about it was awful. Okay. To the point where Clooney still apologizes to this day. Okay, then we get into Christian Bale. It messed up Batman in live action so bad, we had to wait till 2005, and they gave Nolan carte blanche to do whatever he wanted to do because they wanted to get Batman back on the big screen. But Batman and Robin left such a bad taste in people's mouths. Now, I see your comments. I'm going to get to your comments. Keep them coming, okay? Because I appreciate your comments. We're going to talk about them at the end like I always do. But keep those comments coming because I am going to pull them up, okay? So by the time we get to Christian Bale and Christopher Nolan kind of did the really grounded Batman, the Batman without the magic. If Batman could be explained in the real world, Christopher Nolan stripped all of the magic and all of the mystique out of Batman and made him more about his tech and his gadgets, which I wasn't necessarily a fan of. I like Batman Begins the most because that's the only movie of the trilogy that's actually about Batman. The Dark Knight's about the Joker. So, but anyway, then David Mazouz, if you don't know where he's from the TV show Gotham. Now, if you don't know, Smallville was originally supposed to be Gotham. The original concept was, what about Bruce Wayne as a teenager? And they said, we can't do Bruce Wayne as a teenager because he's not Batman yet, and there's nothing interesting about that world. So then they said, why don't we do Clark Kent as a teenager because he still has his powers? That's where Smallville came from. Smallville was originally supposed to be Gotham. Then they decided later on that they would do Gotham, but they retooled it. And what Gotham actually is Batman's villains begin. So you have Catwoman, that's his age. Selina in that show is his age. But you have Riddler, you have Penguin, and then you have a couple different versions of Joker. So the Gotham TV show is actually about James Gordon and his villains. So we don't really see him except in glimpses until the end, which I'm never a fan of a show about the hero without the hero. Then we have Ben Affleck, also part of Snyderverse, and Ben Affleck. Now, Ben Affleck, for me, this is just me personally, is a mixed bag because I do not like him as Batman. I preferred him as Daredevil. But I must admit, in terms of live action, he was the one that most looked like Batman would look like in real life. That's one thing that Snyderverse got right about Batfleck. If Batman were in real life, the way he moved, the way he talked, the way he fight, all that, and the warehouse scene and all that, they got that the best. I'm sorry, even though I don't like Snyder or Snyderverse, I have to give credit where credit is due. And so in terms of live action translation, Batfleck is the most like what Batman would look and act and sound like if he were real. It's a shame he's in the middle of such a controversial story world of mythology, but they really nailed it with the fighting and the look and the cable gun and the disappearing in the voice and everything. They really did. I just don't like Ben Affleck as Batman. When I see him, I do not see Batman. I see Ben Affleck in a Batman costume. He doesn't disappear into Batman for me. I just can't do it. Okay? But that's just me. Now we come to the worst live action Batman I've ever seen in my life, and it's Ian Glenn. He is from the DC Titan show, the live action Titan show. That show, man, that show could have been so good, and it was awful. Started off good, but they made a lot of mistakes. They had excellent casting stacked up next to ridiculous casting. Oh, it could have been so good. And then they didn't have enough of budget to do Beast Boy or changing his morphing stuff enough. So he didn't change enough in the show. Then they kind of made the show about Raven. And then they made the show horror. The DC Titan show was horror. It was just straight up horror. It wasn't superhero action adventure. It was horror. But then when they brought in Batman, they brought in Ian Glenn. He was so bad. He was so bad. He should have been Alfred. He's the worst live action Batman thing I've ever seen, worse than Clooney. He was so bad. He didn't look like Batman. Didn't sound like Batman. Didn't fight like Batman. Why did you think that was Bruce Wayne? That's Alfred at best. Okay. Then Kevin Conroy is the voice of Batman. That was animation in 92. But he played Batman in the CW crossover Crisis on Infinite Earths. He played a version of Batman in live action. But of course, they punked him. Of course, Batwoman beat him up. Of course, they dogged him. Of course, they made him a villain. Of course, they destroyed him, because what else would they do? Okay? Keep your comments coming. I'm going to pull them up in just a minute. Okay? Then finally, we have Robert Pattinson. If you know me, you know I don't like Pattinson at all, but I can't see Batman. He's sparkly vampire bats. He's Forever Twilight. He's a good actor, but I don't care. He's not Batman. He's too skinny. He's too young. He don't have no aura, as they say now. He don't have no presence. He don't have no aura. Not scared of him. He don't look like he could beat a rug. And when he tries to do that deep voice, I'm vengeance. So maybe one day when he goes through puberty, you know, when he starts shaving, maybe he can be Batman then. Anyway, okay. So I've got one more to do. And then, I got a lot of comments in my chat. I'm loving that. I'm going to pull them up too. Thanks for doing them. You know, I love reading your comments live, and I love talking about them. So I'm going to pull them up. So thank you. I appreciate it. Okay. The last one I'm going to do is this right here. And it's on the screen behind me. And it's Star Wars. Now, I don't know if I can think of another IP that is more different now than it was when it started in Star Wars. Because as we know, Disney bought Star Wars, and then Disney Star Wars is not Lucas Star Wars. And then we know that Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau have their own version too, and, you know, Rebels and Ahsoka and Clone Wars. And so I don't know if I know of any other IP that's ever been taken out of its historic original roots and morphed into something else like Star Wars has been. I don't know of anything else that has had that happen to it. Okay. So I mean, you know, everybody has their opinion on it. Most diehard fans like George Lucas's original stuff and think there are only 6 movies. And some people think there are only 3 movies. So Star Wars proves my point, I think, better than any other of the other IPs I've talked about today, and that your view of it depends on when you jumped on board with it. Because if all you know is the sequel trilogy, if that's all you know, because as far as I'm concerned, Empire Strikes Back is the best Star Wars of all time. Anything Star Wars ever, the best version of it is Empire Strikes Back. There's nothing that even comes close to that movie, as far as I'm concerned. So that's just me. But if all you know is Rey and them, if all you know is Rey and them, okay, then I'm going to be honest with you, I feel sorry for you. Because that's not Star Wars. That's a perversion of George Lucas's original idea. But that's another conversation. Okay, let me pull you up comments. I'm loving these comments, y'all. I'm loving this. I'm going to pull them up. Hold on, let me get them on the screen. Yep. Okay, here we go. Prophet says, Soup's getting... No, let me put me on camera for that. Soup's getting beat down the whole movie on set. He did get beat down. I told you there's no super in that man. You're not going to make me like James Gunn's Superman ever. No one's ever going to make me like it. So just forget it, because I'm not going to like it. Okay? There's nothing you can say or do. Every scene is getting beat up. The first scene is him getting beat up. He's broken, bloodied, and bruised in the snow. Krypto comes and plays with him, not hurts him. Krypto drags him home. They put him underneath the sunlight lamps. He starts screaming from the sunlight. Then he goes back to the fight he just left and gets beat up again. He gets knocked out the sky. The costume was dirty the whole movie. No. So if you want to look at my Superman review, it's on my channel. And it's one of my most popular videos because it's awful. Okay. Prophet 815, I jumped on board George Reeves' Soups to Benchmark superhero. A lot of people, that was their first exposure to Superman, was George Reeves' version. Remember, the reason that was more wholesome is because the country was more wholesome at that time. So if you weren't alive at the time, or you never, if it's before your time, but you watched it on reruns on TV, like it's on H&I, it's on MeTV now, George Reeves. It's because the country was much more wholesome. Everything wasn't sexual. Everything wasn't a political statement. It was a much more wholesome time. That's why it looks the way it does. Remember Lois Clark, the villain, called her stupid for not realizing, yes, people time travel and called Lois Lane stupid to her face. Like, how did you not know? Superman, Clark Kent. Superman, it was like, how did you know? That's one of the conceits of the mythos, but still, okay. Looked like Flash Gordon with Batman cape. I'm assuming you mean Bob Kane's original version of Batman. That one. So yeah. Oh wait, no, you can't see it. So yeah, that one. Yeah, if that's what you mean, yeah, it does look like Flash Gordon with Batman's cape, for sure. Cajun says, most of the DC comics I have are New 52, proving my point. So if that's your introduction to the comic world, because most of the stories that us longtime readers know about happened before New 52. And most of the stuff that we think is the best stuff, particularly the Batman stuff, well, and Superman too, happened before New 52. So none of that stuff is, for longtime comic readers, that's not our jumping on point. We go way back further than that. Okay. Adventures of Captain Marvel Serial was great, gritty and product of his time, but a great watch. It really, really was. That's why you hear me say all the time that Captain Marvel is not big with superpowers, and his name is not Shazam. Okay. His name is not Shazam. That's the wizard's name. I'm pulling this up, but I don't think I can play it. I don't know if this is public, so I don't know if I get copyright struck or not. So I'm not willing to chance it, but I do want to show you this just right quick. If I can get a frame with him in it. There we go, finally. Okay. So Captain Marvel was the first one to get a serial, and you really should watch it. It's available on YouTube, and you can watch the whole thing because it came in 12 parts, 3 hours. But it's really, 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 really good. The way they do the transforming effect is really innovative, with them not having as much technology for special effects as we do. The way they do it is great. So I definitely highly recommend a watch of that. So yeah, it's great. 66 Batmobile from Popcorn Fires 420. 66 Batmobile is still my favorite. A lot of people feel that way. I mean, the 66 Batmobile is just iconic. I mean, what can beat it? I mean, I like the one on the animated series, and I like Keaton's version, but I mean, there's nothing like. And I've even seen that one at like car shows when they used to, before the Last Millionaire that bought it, they used to haul that around the car shows. So I've actually seen that one in person, and it's awesome. It's awesome. It's just awesome. Just no comparison. Batman Returns is my favorite Christmas movie. Okay, that's bait. That's another starter. We're going to argue about whether or not Batman Returns was a Christmas movie, just like we argue about Die Hard. Yeah, okay. Y'all going to have that fight. I ain't going for that. But anyway, I still think Kilmer would have been a good Batman with a better script. Maybe. he was a better Bruce Wayne than Batman to me. Maybe. I don't know. But the vibe was never there for me. The villains were too campy and over the top. So it was the beginning of trying to do Batman 66 again in the 90s. Because Two-Face and Riddler were just completely over the top and it was just ridiculous. And then by the time we get to Batman and Robin, we have Bane and Poison Ivy. They're straight out of Adam West story world, except they weren't any good. So Kilmer is still not a favorite for me, but I understand some people like him. The George Clooney one had a lot of studio interference as well. Probably so. I mean, that's normally what happens. Normally, you have to let a director realize their vision. If it's a good vision, it works. That's what happened with Nolan. You know, normally when you have a director with a clear vision, if it's a good vision, it'll work. Too many cooks. Basically, more a toy commercial. Gotham, the TV show, is basically Batman Rogues Gallery origin story. That's right. That's right. So it really focused much more on the beginning of his villains more than anything else. So you don't even really see him until the end. I have never been a fan of a superhero show without the hero. I did like Cameron Bacondova. I did like their version of Selena. I liked her a lot. Because she, to me, acted like Selena would act when she was a teen. So I really bought her as Catwoman, very much so. Pretty interesting. I didn't know that about Smallville. Yeah, Smallville was originally Gotham. They just couldn't figure out how to make it work. So I knew with Smallville, I knew what they were going to do. And with Gotham, they did the same thing. I knew they were going to bring in every element of Superman's adult life into the show, and they did. And I knew it. I knew it from the jump. I'm like, there's not enough story here. Smallville was over after the third season. Then it became Fortress. And then later on, it became Metropolis. So in Smallville, maybe seasons 1 through 3, or maybe seasons 1 through 4. And then 5 and 6 was maybe Fortress, maybe 7. But 8, 9, 10 for sure was Metropolis. Because there's not enough story there. You know, they keep regressing Clark, which is what they did. And they brought in every element of Superman's adult life into Clark before he suited up, which was stupid. I mean, Zod, I mean, Doomsday, I mean, Lois, I mean, you name it. Everything about Superman's life was on Smallville before Clark officially became Superman. I knew they were going to have to do that. I knew they were going to have to do the same thing with Gotham. Now, Arrow, the CW show, they solved that problem by doing it with flashbacks, which I thought was very innovative. So we got to see both Oliver Queen in the modern day, him suiting up, training, and being Arrow. And then we got to see him back on the island. We got to see the lead up to that. And they did it they did both in the same show, which I thought was brilliant. But I knew with both Smallville and Gotham, they were going to have to bring in all the elements from the adult life because there's not enough story there before the hero would get suited up. There's not enough story there. Okay, so I knew that. And I got some other issues with Smallville. Don't get me started, okay? I never finished Gotham. Yeah, Batman shows up in the end, but just like in silhouette form, and he is, and David has to wear kind of that stupid mask, and it's just. They didn't have the rights to the titles of Joker and Batman and Gotham, though Warner Brothers did, so they had to work around that, which was hard. Same issue with DC Titans. But why would you do a show that you didn't have the rights to anyway? That still doesn't let them off the hook to me. That just tells me you don't know what you're doing. You can't do a show about the hero because people are going to want to see the hero. Then you didn't feature the hero. Can't make sense of that. Cannot. George Clooney, sometimes 20 minutes from me. He was here a few weeks ago. Cool. George Clooney is cool with making fun of it because he knows it was awful. So he doesn't take himself too seriously in that regard because he knows it was awful. Schumacher apologized for it before he died. Schumacher got on. If you've never seen it, Schumacher said, "I want to apologize to everyone that was offended by my Batman movies. I never meant for them to be so divisive." So, I mean, would have been interesting to see where the Snyderverse would have ended up. Lighter to more heroic, we'll never know. Snyder doesn't know how to do light, and Snyder doesn't know how to do heroes. What Snyder knows how to do is epic filmography. shots of Superman flying in the sky with his cape blowing with the sun behind him. That is Snyder's bailiwick. The fight scene with Batman, the warehouse scene, that was on point. That was still the best live action Batman fight we've ever seen. So I'll give him credit where credit is due. I'll give him credit for the things he does well, but he doesn't know how to do light. And he doesn't really know how to do heroic. He does heavy, all the stuff in Man of Steel and Superman in the Sea of Skulls and, letting Pa Kent die by a tornado for no reason and telling Clark not to save him. And Ma Kent saying, you don't owe these people anything. If you read the comics, the Kents were the ones that told him to serve mankind with his powers once he got old enough. So I have no confidence that the Snyderverse would have gotten better. And you know how I know that? Look at the stuff that we've seen then. Well, I mean, before that, look at, what's the name? What's that movie? The movie with the girls. I'll think of it. You know the one I'm talking about. I have to look it up. I can't remember the name. But anyway, look at Rebel Moon. Okay. Look at Rebel Moon. How did that turn out? All that stuff is the same type of dystopian. Sucker Punch. That's what I was trying to think of. Sucker Punch. I was like, why is that name escaping me? All that stuff that he does is all the same kind of vibe. It's dark, dystopian, that kind of thing. So I have no confidence that it would have gotten any better or any different. Just my opinion. Titans was a mixed bag, but his name escapes me, was a real good Nightwing. That's Brendan Thwaites. Yes, he was perfect. Lord have mercy. If I've ever seen a good book-to-screen translation, he was the perfect Dick Grayson to me. The perfect one. Titans had potential, but on the same show, they had Brendan Thwaites as a perfect Nightwing, Robin then Nightwing, because he transitioned from Robin to Nightwing on the show. They had a perfect Donna Troy, Wonder Girl. She was perfect. On that same show, they had Starfire looking like a 1970s hooker, looking like a streetwalker from the 70s. I said, what the world? And what's her name? Tegan Croft that played Raven. She shouldn't have been Raven. She should have been Tara. Tegan Croft is Tara. She's not Raven. Let me pull a picture of this girl up if you don't know who I'm talking about. And I'm pulling her up at the age she was when she played Raven on Titans, because she's 21 now, so she doesn't look like this now. But look at that. That's Tara. It's not Raven. So I couldn't believe that they had perfect Grayson, perfect Nightwing, perfect Donna Troy, perfect on the same show with Hooker Starfire and Raven, who should have been Tara. I couldn't believe it. I still can't believe it. Okay? Let you know they never discuss Batwoman again. I have to give you a no lies detected on that one. Popcorn farts. If we don't never talk about that Batwoman show again, it'll be too soon. Everything that was wrong with the CW ever, and everything that was wrong with the woke infection virus got into Batwoman. The trailers were bashing Bruce Wayne. The engineer that put together Batman's suit said his suit was little perfection. Ruby Rose smiled at the camera and said, it will be when it fits a woman. Just shut up. So Batwoman was messed up literally from the first trailer. So how that show even stayed on as long as it did is beyond me. It couldn't be based on ratings. I watched The Dark Knight last night. Bale is easily the best live-action Batman so far. Okay, if he is for your money, that's cool. Some people think it's Batfleck. That's cool. The Dark Knight is a Joker movie. What Nolan did was he stripped all the magic out of Batman and left it in for Joker, which is why Joker was able to do all those ridiculous things he could do. He stripped all the magic out of Batman, but left it in for the Joker. And I know a lot of people love the Nolan trilogy, which is cool. What's wrong with that? Nothing wrong with that. It's just my opinion on it is different. Jurassic Park, that's another franchise that has changed from the original. The original, still the best one. The first Jurassic Park movie is still the best one. These movies now are just kind of like money grabs. They're formula movies, but it's a formula that people like. They keep making millions. Why would they stop making them if they keep doing large box office? Remember, the point of my live stream today is to talk about your jumping on point. When did you first get introduced to the IP? That's your vision of it. The younger you are, the less of it you've experienced. That's not wrong or bad. It's just a statement of fact. I'd argue Revenge of the Sith, but I know that's a controversial take to OT fans. Right, a lot of people say that. OT fans like myself think Empire is just the bomb.com and it's never been topped. A lot of people feel that way about Revenge of the Sith, though, for the prequel trilogy, that Revenge of the Sith is actually a better movie than Empire. I personally don't think so, and a lot of people don't, but a lot of people do. They do think that Revenge of the Sith is the best Star Wars ever, which is cool. But like I said, it's your jumping on point that makes a difference. Me and my son went to see Revenge of the Sith at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning because that's the only time we could get tickets in to see it. And we saw people from school there, from my school and his school. It was so much fun. It was funny because it was 2 o'clock on like a school night. We still went. 2 a.m. And I saw people, I was in school at the time. I saw people there from my school, my college, and my son. It was really something, but it was so much fun. So much fun. Still don't think it's a better movie than Empire, though, because none of them are better movies than Empire as far as I'm concerned. Just my opinion. Okay, Star Wars is still a trilogy. I accept the prequels as loose canon, like a bad semi-accurate reenactment of the events. That's an interesting perspective. Like it's bad cosplay. Like this ain't what really happened, but this is, us doing some cosplay. Okay. Star Wars, OT, Zon novels, prequels, Clone Wars, and Rebels, cartoons, and Mando season 1 and 2. Andor series and Rogue One are best Star Wars content. Cool. That's what works for you. I don't agree. I agree with the Zahn novels because Timothy Zahn single-handedly kept Star Wars alive between the movies. I don't agree that the prequels, I do agree that the prequels are good content. I don't agree that they're better than the OT. Clone Wars and Rebels are offshoots to me. Mando season 1 and 2 was good, but it got bad really, really fast, and it ate its own premise. Mando should have ended after season 2 because it destroyed its own premise at the end of season 2. Okay, so that's just me. Andor, I think, was good for what it was, but I think Andor was overhyped because we had gotten so much bad Star Wars that wasn't really bad. So I think people kind of overhyped it more a little bit when it was. Just my opinion. Okay. George Reeves Superman is great, just wholesome fun. Yes, it was just wholesome. So if you ever want some old school wholesome fun from back in your parents' or your grandparents' day, depending on how old you are, parents, grandparents, or maybe great-grandparents if you're super young, watch your George Reeves TV show. Because it was great. It was funny. He winked at the camera a lot. That was a convention from the comics. At the end of the comic book, Clark would wink. He would break the fourth wall and wink at the audience because he was laughing because it was obvious he was Superman, but nobody around him knew it. So he just winked at us. And George Reeves did that a lot too. So it's really fun. It's old school fun though. Oh, a very, very, very old school at this point. Your parents, your grandparents, your great-grandparents kind of show. But again, that's what I'm talking about today. You're jumping on point. You also didn't have a lot to choose from in superhero movies when Superman came out. Back in 1978, that's true. Wasn't a lot. The thing that began to break superhero movies into what we know now was Blade and X-Men. They often don't get the credit that they deserve, but it's really Blade and X-Men that started moving movies more, superhero movies more towards the mainstream. And then Iron Man in 2008 blew it wide open, and then we got the MCU. But it's really Blade and X-Men that started that shift in consciousness. Because all up until then, superhero movies were still kind of niche and still kind of geek movies, honestly. I do think Nolan's movies has something to do with it as well, but it's still the Blade and the X-Men movies that started it. Nolan's movies didn't start it. George Reeves did a Superman cameo in I Love Lucy. I Love Lucy was a big show back in the day. My dad used to watch it. I forgot who else in my family, older in my family, used to watch that because that was before my time, but they loved it. So one of the great things about very sincere and most faithful 90s cartoons like Spider-Man and Batman is that they made 90s kids fans of the classic stories. Yes. Yes. The best animated versions of X-Men, Spider-Man, and Batman all came out in the 90s. That is just not arguable as far as I'm concerned. And so if you grew up in the 90s and those were your cartoons, then you got to see the classic comic book stories brought to life in animation. And they were done so well. Those are still the best animated versions of Spider-Man, X-Men, and Batman were the 90s versions. Now, a lot of people wonder why Superman, the animated series, doesn't get the same props because they nerfed him too much. That was the beginning of him being less super, which was a mistake. Because people don't know how to do anything that's middle ground. So he goes from being extremely overpowered to being extremely underpowered. They don't know how to set the dot in the middle. They don't know how to set the dial, and folks don't know how to do that. So every beam, every blow knocks him down. He gets hurt. That's why the animated series didn't get the same props as Batman show. Because you can't take the super out of Superman and think it's going to be successful. Okay? Redback Slaps, is that original Batman, Bob Kane. Captain Marvel, my favorite character. He and Captain America. Can't go wrong with the hero. Examples of heroic, yes. Virtuous, yes. Noble characters that inspire hope in a better world. I wish I could like that 5 times. Captain Marvel, he's also my favorite character side with Batman and Captain America, especially the Chris Evans version. Can't go wrong. Heroic, virtuous, noble, that are inspirations. And we will add old school Superman with that too. We definitely add Chris Reeve Superman with that too. Inspire hope in a better world. That's right. That's the right frame for those heroes. Not every hero. That's not the Punisher. That's not Wolverine. That's not Nightcrawler. That's not Blade. But it is Captain America, Captain Marvel, and Superman. What's wrong with that? Wonder Woman is in the middle. Wonder Woman believes in peace through strength. Wonder Woman doesn't want to fight, but she will if she has to. She'd rather have peace first, at least originally, because Wonder Woman was originally an ambassador. So her motto is peace through strength. So she's not quite the same as these characters, but I love them. I absolutely love them. It is a Christmas movie. No, it's not, but whatever. Penguin's plot revolves around killing kids and ruining Christmas. Now that's true. It was grotesque. It was a Tim Burton movie. It wasn't a Batman movie. It was a Tim Burton movie about double-mindedness, schizophrenia, and dual personalities, and it just used Batman as a backdrop. It was not actually a Batman movie. It was Tim Burton trying to out-weird himself. And yes, I will go on record as saying I'm the only person on earth that doesn't like Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman, but I don't. So all y'all can get mad at me. You follow me on Twitter. I've said that before. I do not like Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman. I know I'm the only one. I'll stand by my black prophetic self if I have to. I do not like her version of Catwoman because number one, Selena Kyle is not blonde. Number two, she's not mousy. Number three, she's not a secretary. Number four, she doesn't have a split personality. Number five, she's not a mutant. She wasn't brought back to life by cat saliva. That ain't Catwoman. So I know everybody loves her and you can love her. No, not for me. Not for me. I've seen some of those Captain Marvel clips. He was beating the bad guys down, but he really did. In the Captain Marvel serial, man, he didn't play. He was rough. Captain Marvel was rough, man. He wasn't like a kid in an adult's body. He was the captain. He's military. So he wasn't playing games, man. It was really rough. I define a Christmas movie by whether or not you can play the soundtrack as a Christmas album. Home Alone passes, Die Hard mostly fails. Now that's a good perspective. A Christmas movie by whether or not you can play the soundtrack as a Christmas album. That's a cool standard. That's cool. Home Alone passes, Die Hard mostly fails. If there's a reference to Christmas in almost every scene of Batman Returns, and I do play soundtrack Christmas, have at it. I'm not arguing with you. I'm just saying it don't work for me. I'm not arguing with you, dog. I'm not arguing. You do you. I'm just saying it don't work for me. First season of Gotham was almost like Law and Order. That was kind of true. It's just that it was about the villains. About the villains. Okay. Dawn of Justice was 3 movies. Yeah, kind of. Snyder with Man of Steel and Batman vs. Superman and Justice League and all that. Yeah, that's kind of all the same thread. Definitely the same aesthetic. Wonder Woman's movies were wildly different. The first Wonder Woman movie with her in World War I wasn't really too bad. Wonder Woman 84 was awful, to the point of where we were cringing from start to finish. We couldn't believe it was the same director. Everybody was like, really? Snyder's a talented director of photography that was promoted beyond his skills. He can only adopt shot-for-shot adaptations of comics like 300 and Watchmen. I think that's somewhat accurate because we don't have enough evidence to disprove that statement. We don't have enough evidence of other work that he's done where he just had free reign, where it ends up being a good adaptation. So this statement from Dave T. Geek sounds like a very accurate statement to me, because point to other work that he's done where disproves that what he's saying. So I think that's on point. Streetwalker is immediately a great superhero name. Okay. 1970s Hooker, yes. Great Donna Troy, yes. I thought they got Beast Boy mostly right. Yeah, but he didn't change enough because I know they didn't have the budget to do his morphing, because Beast Boy's whole shtick is changing into all the animals and he's green. They didn't do that enough for me. And I must say, now this is my own bias coming in, I'm spoiled by the Teen Titans cartoon version. So when I think of Beast Boy, I think of that version. So he's wisecracking, he's goofy, he's a big kid, he's lovable, he's kind of naive, but he's got a big heart at the same time. So I just admit that's bias from the cartoon. But when I think of Beast Boy, I think of that version. It feels that way with the MCU after Endgames, but that's only part of it. Yeah, well, we've had many discussions on that. But after Endgame, they pretty much have a completed story. From Iron Man 2008 to Avengers Endgame, kind of completed the story. So it would have been better after that to, number one, let it rest, but they weren't going to do that. Number two, they should have completely shifted the focus. I don't think they had the rights to X-Men or Fantastic Four at that point. If they had the right to X-Men, they hadn't had them long enough to mount something. So what they should have done was shift the focus to street-level heroes, and we should have gotten more Netflix Daredevil and more Defenders, more stuff in that vein. Could have gotten more Spider-Man, more Moon Knight, if it had been done well. We didn't need WandaVision. We sure didn't need Multiverse of Madness. Just everything after Endgame, we didn't need none of that. We didn't need Echo. We didn't need Ms. Marvel. We didn't need none of that. So if we had gone, we maybe could have even done the retro original Defenders. Valkyrie, Doc Strange, Namor, the Hulk. We also never saw the original Guardians of the Galaxy. We could have done that. They should have left Endgame where it was. So I agree with that. Ate its own premise is a genius way of putting it. I'm stealing that phrase. Have at it. I say it all the time. They ate its own premise. Yeah, I say the only exceptions are Loki season 1, No Way Home, Deadpool and Wolverine. Well, Deadpool and Wolverine is pure nostalgia bait. is not necessarily a strong story. It's because we love Hugh Jackman as Logan, and we wanted to see Wolverine and Deadpool in the same movie, and the rest of it is just nostalgia. So I do not necessarily argue that it's a good movie. I think that it's the best use of nostalgia we've seen in a while. And that's what they're banking on for Avengers Doomsday, but it ain't going to be the same because there's too many characters in it. But that's another story. I put Raimi Spider-Man in the same group as Blade and X-Men. Maybe. Spider-Man's original trailer had him stringing up a helicopter between the Twin Towers, and then September 11, 2001 happened, so they couldn't use that. So maybe Spider-Man's in that too, but again, X-Men and Blade already has started the ball rolling. But I think we can give some credit to Raimi Spider-Man. I'm not old. I just had Nick at Night as a kid. Okay. Superman, the animated series, also couldn't compare to Batman and Spider-Man. Similar to our convo we had about Fantastic Four. That's right. Because they don't know what to do with Superman. Nerfing him is not the way. Giving him challenges that are worthy of him, giving him character challenges, not just physical challenges. This is not hard. You want to put Superman in positions where he has to make values-based decisions. That's what makes him who he is. You also want to see him being super. So that's why in Shimon Superman, where he just flew into another country to save lives and so naive he didn't understand, that could be misconstrued as an act of war by some. You can't be Superman for all them years and not get that. Yes, too stupid. You can't be that naive and unaware of the world around you and you're the Man of Steel. Superman needs to have values challenges. Superman needs to have scenarios where he's only got time to save a certain amount of people. What's he going to do? Can he figure a way out of that? Superman has to choose between the people of Kandor and the people of Earth. What's he going to do? You have to give Superman values-based challenges. Values challenges. Superman loses his powers and he's Clark all the time. So he's going to keep on being a reporter. What's he going to do with the obvious depression that would come from him not having his powers? You have to give Superman values challenges, not just physical challenges. But when you do give him physical challenges, I want you to notice something. I noticed it in Superman the Animated Series, and I noticed it. Superman never uses all his powers. That gets on my nerves. When's the last time you saw him use freeze breath? When's the last time you saw him use microscopic vision? When's the last time you saw him use telescopic vision? He never uses all his powers. That gets on my nerves. Okay. It was fun watching The Dark Knight. They say MCU a lot, meaning Major Crimes Unit. Yeah. Deadpool and Wolverine's pretty entertaining. I consider that good. Nothing wrong with being entertained by it. I look at it not just from a fan point of view, but also from a writer point of view, because I'm a writer. And from a writer's point of view, it's not a strong story. It's strong nostalgia that makes that movie work, not the story. Not so. Most people don't even remember what the story was. And the funny thing about it is that it's supposed to be a reboot. So what they tried to do with Deadpool and Wolverine was really a reboot of the Fox universe. Elektra, Blade, X-Men, Fantastic Four. That. What they're going to do with Avengers Doomsday is going to be a reboot of the MCU, which I think is a little too late, but whatever. All right, guys, this has been great. I love it when we can do long live streams like this. Can I stop being tongue-tied for just a minute? I love when we can do long live streams like this. I love your comments. I love interacting with you. This is great. I appreciate you showing up and talking to me live. Please like this video and share this video as many places as you can. Subscribe to my channel. I have a merch store where I've got, mugs and t-shirts and a whole bunch of stuff. The story of Deadpool and Wolverine was too meta and could being commentary about our franchises that have died by the most popular characters. Yeah, that's true. It was a big wink It was a big fourth wall break and wink at us as fans, the whole thing. That is who Deadpool is as a character, but it was done too much. That should be used as a seasoning. It was done too much in that movie. Okay, but that's it for me today. Again, thank you for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Please like and share this video. Subscribe to my channel if you have not. I'm relaunching my comic book, The Z Normals, and I need you guys' help to put it through. I'm trying to get getting my own stuff going. I've already got my own comics, but I'm trying to build my own verse. It's called the Nucleus Verse because my comic book company is called Nucleus Comics. That's where I'm trying to go. I need your help to get there. So if you follow me on Twitter and you like my YouTube videos, please consider supporting me. I will let you know when that happens. It's not just money. You know, I appreciate goodwill. I appreciate your comments. I appreciate your retweets, you know, because don't nobody owe you nothing. I don't think anybody owes me anything. That's why I tell you all the time. I'm very grateful for your support because don't nobody owe you nothing. You don't owe me nothing. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your comments. I appreciate your financial support. I appreciate your retweets. I appreciate all that. I really do. So I'm trying to launch the Nucleus Verse. Maybe when I launch it this time, maybe I need to show you more characters in it. I don't know. But we'll see. But when that happens officially, I will let you know. Okay? All right. That's it for today. Thanks again. I will see you same time next week. DD2 Comics Chat out.